Hi, I'm Paul. So for this video, I think we're going to talk about self-centeredness. What is self-centeredness? It seems that a lot of us believe that self-centeredness is just to think about yourself and not think about others. But I think it goes a lot deeper than that. I think in self-centeredness, it comes from not so much thinking of yourself, because you're more thinking of an idea of yourself. But then we could also say that in self-centeredness, we could think of an idea of another person. But in both of them circumstances, what we're focusing on is the image that we create in our own mind. And not actually thinking of the other person or even yourself. So if we hold an image in our head, and we believe that image to be us, me, myself, is a thought. Me, myself, is an image. And this image belongs in my head. So the self-centeredness wouldn't, well, the center of the self-centeredness wouldn't be my body, all of me. The center of it would be in my head. So the me, which is an idea or a thought, is centered in my head. Now, I did mention that even in self-centeredness, you're focusing on an image and not you. You see, if self-centeredness is just in my head, and this doesn't include my body, if I believe that I am thoughts and ideas, this is totally self-centered into my head. Let's say I was a nice looking person, well built, nice body. Then this self-centeredness in my head can then say, well, I can use my body, my nice looks, to gain more security, more ideas, more images in my head. In other words, suggesting my body is something separate to the center that I create that's in my head. And this will work exactly the same for other people. So it's not that self-centeredness is just not caring about anybody else. It's more not seeing anybody else because you're focusing on the center of the self-centeredness, which is an idea in your head. So why do we need to have this self-centeredness, this image maker in the head, the thought creator, the thing that wants to keep on going in thought, trying to seek for better thoughts, better ideas, better images, trying to justify its images? Why do we need it? So we could say this is for security. This being enclosed in the head in thoughts gives me security. I isolate myself to just in my head, rather than seeing the real world as it is. I isolate myself in my head, and this gives me security. It gives me a sense of control because I could think of what I want, and this gives me security. So then we could say, so does this isolation give you security? So if it does, then would locking yourself in your room, which is isolation, give you complete security. Might give you temporary security. But then something else starts coming in and niggling. You see, when I say security, we can look at this in two different ways, because physically, our body does need security. Food, shelter, water, so on. Safety. Perhaps if you're in a threatening situation where you're in danger. I don't know. A man dressed up in a clown suit is very frightening. And I need to escape, so I need to find security. I need to isolate, hide away. But you see, this is different to the security that we're talking about with the self-centeredness, because the self-centeredness appears that it's giving us a psychological security. Keeps our mind secure. But what is it keeping our mind secure of? What is it afraid of? So if we isolate ourselves, then we could say this doesn't give us security. Then what we're fearing is not what's out there, but what's inside. Let's say you was thrown in prison, in a room, one room, on your own, isolated, for a long stretch of time, completely isolated. Do you then feel psychologically secure? Or then does your mind start wandering into thoughts which you don't want it to go? Which I would think that that's probably the case. Like I say, the security or the fear that we're trying to find security of is not the fear of what's so much out there, but what's inside. It's our own memories. So in one way, this security is to keep memories going. But it seems that it's only to keep certain memories going. Certain memories what fit into the image that we create of ourselves, and try to continue these memories going. But then we want to run away from other memories. So these memories, what we create of ourselves, is what we're trying to seek, which then just keeps us away from the memories that we don't want. So we're locked in a cell for a long stretch of time. What happens? So firstly, our minds probably start getting hectic, trying to keep thought going in a certain direction. But then with no stimulation from the outside world, it starts to fall apart. And then you start to see thoughts, or start to create thoughts like, this is being unfair on me. Make excuses, not my fault. I shouldn't be in this. This is horrible. I hate this. Then it would turn into the self. I hate myself. I'm stupid. Why did I get myself into this? And as these thoughts start to settle, then you start to see other thoughts, like the things that you did to other people, mental games, bullying, pushing people, taking advantage of people. You see how these thoughts start turning from the self-centeredness outwards. Slowly, we're starting to see a little bit further past our own skulls. But this is painful. This is the thing that we're running away from. And then these thoughts start to go a little bit further, and we start to see that everybody's playing these games. Everybody's suffering. We're all caged up in our own self-centeredness in our own heads. And we're all creating suffering to one another, to the world, to the earth. And slowly our minds start to expand away from the self-centeredness. You see, this is the idea of spirituality. This is what you're unlocking when you get rid of the self-centeredness. Your mind starts to expand to see what else is in the world. Start to feel the rest of the world. You see, we say this in spirituality, that the idea is to get rid of the I, and then we have no thoughts. And if we have no thoughts, we don't worry too much about the outside world. Still sounds a little bit self-centered. To me, I think it goes a lot further. When you start to see the outside world and see that everybody else is trapped in this self-centeredness, then you start to question why. What is this self-centeredness? Is it not conditioning? So everybody's conditioned, which just means that all memories in that's stored in everybody's head is of all the same thing, the same conditioning. It's all said what's right and what's wrong and what we should and shouldn't do. But then when it says what's wrong, and we look at the world and there's so much suffering, we then try to get away from all this suffering and become self-centered because we say to ourselves, I can't do anything about it. And then we feel hopeless. So we create an image in our head where we can stick with that for safety, for security. See, I think spirituality goes a lot further than what we talk about. I think that when you truly accept that all the suffering in the world, everybody's conditioning, the wars, all the hurt, the mind games, in the whole world, I'm responsible for. I played that game. I agreed with many of the rules. I agreed with all of it. I joined in. I created it just as much as everybody else. All this suffering that's happening. Wars. But this is a hard one to face, so we like to jump back into our thoughts in our head and say things like, I can't do anything about it, which gives us security. If you think about somebody who goes into the army, they join in the army, and they go to war, and see all the hurt, kill many people, and then when they come home, they're horrified, not just of all the deaths, but how they was able to do what they did because of conditioning telling them that it's a right thing. You know, in executions, we used to do executions where we would get a few soldiers to shoot a man. So we would have like 5 soldiers with 5 guns. 4 of them guns would have blanks in, and 1 would have a bullet, but the soldiers wouldn't know which one has the bullet. And this is because if the person knew that it was them who killed them, they would have to carry that weight. But as long as they don't know which one had the bullet in, they can keep their excuses. They can keep the self-centeredness, the beliefs, the thoughts, the ideas of, well, it might not have been my gun. But the truth is, you went along with it. Like we all go along with the conditioning that we've been given, told that it's right or wrong. I think this is why a lot of us want to go to church and pray to God and have belief in God, because I think deep down we all know we're guilty for joining in, and we're praying for forgiveness. Maybe not to the idea of God that religion creates, but forgiveness to the earth, forgiveness to nature. We all lost our way. So I think really this idea of spirituality, I think the end goal really is to go to this depth, not just to look at ourselves and say these thoughts are creating suffering in me. That's a start. I mean, that's where you have to start. You can't solve the world without solving yourself, but I think that it does continue on. Not just on the sake of I want to get rid of the suffering in me, but I want to get rid of the suffering in everybody. Wanting world peace, not just peace for herself. Anyway, I think that's all I've got to say. Thanks very much for listening.